Hey gang, John Bacarella here with your Lake St. Clair Ice Fishing Report, brought to you by Sportsman's Direct. It is Thursday, February 17th, and it's been a wild weather day, and the past 24 hours have been crazy. This morning we started out like in the mid to upper 40s with rain and flood watch and warnings up, and now it's like 29 degrees outside and it's snowing. So it's been wild. And if you remember my last report, I talked about riding the wave, right? And some of you folks I know have been riding that weather wave and really cashing in on that shallow bite that generally happens this time of the year, especially when these storm fronts approach, you know, going into at least up until the day that the storm hits, and a lot of times including the day after, even on the backside when the cold front comes in. Doesn't mean you can't catch fish in those in-between times, but the fishing just gets crazy good at the beginning of these fronts when they're coming in, and like I said, a lot of times into that day after. But so that's what we got going on out there right now. The winds blew hard out of the south, and earlier in the week I looked at the satellite image of the lake, and most of the lake was frozen. Now that was earlier in the week, before the wind and the rain and everything just hit. There was a little bit of open water off of the point at Metro going all over to Harley, and then out it was a pretty good chunk of water, but relatively speaking for the whole lake, you know, it wasn't all that much. And then down on that south end, there was also some open water down there by the Detroit River. Now, I went down this morning after the wind shifted. It had already been blowing out of the north for a while, so on the backside of this front with the cold air coming in, and I wanted to just, you know, assess you know, what the lake looked like today. I can't get a satellite image right now, it's way too cloudy. We won't be able to look at that probably for another day or two, so I wanted to go down and just check it out. And from Beacon's Cove looking out onto the lake, you could see open water way out there, probably a mile out, and then from Metro, it looked like a couple of miles of ice out there, and really didn't lose much ice. I mean, not that we could really see. Even a lot of the broken up stuff that was out there at the beginning when everything froze is still there. So we didn't lose a lot of ice with this rain. I mean, most of that rain stayed up on top of the ice. It cleared the snow off, and then tonight it's going to freeze. Now, the only thing is that, you know, if we get a bunch of snow on there, you're probably going to have some slushy conditions in some areas. But with it going down to 12 and then all day tomorrow, like a high of 21 or 22, I mean, a lot of that stuff is going to freeze up. So by the weekend, come the weekend, I would expect the ice conditions are still going to be pretty good out there. Did the same thing. I also drove down to Selfridge and looked out from Selfridge. There were still a couple of machines out there on the ice today, even in the rain. Or it was actually, yeah, it was still raining at that point when I was down there. Didn't see any open water out there. It didn't look like anything really opened up out in front of Selfridge, but you have to bear in mind though that ice out in front of Selfridge is not as old as that ice that was locked in over there between Beacons and Metro. So it started out a little bit thinner, so the rain may have had more of an effect on it. The other thing is too, at Selfridge, you've got that canal or that drain coming out along M59 that dumps in there, and that can really eat away at that ice at that Selfridge boat launch. So if you are going to be launching machines there, I would really check it first, make sure that that ice thickness has not degraded there, both right at the boat launch and then out at the mouth of it as well. Sometimes right around those corners coming out of that boat launch is where it starts to go first. Other than that, the ice thicknesses out there should be pretty good. This warm up, always you got to be careful with gas pockets and things like that because they're going to open wide open. The spillway was just roaring with all that rain that we had. So you're definitely going to have lost ice out in front of the spillway. There's no doubt, right? So same thing at the Clinton River. The Clinton River was wide open today. So the ice at the Clinton River is going to be blown out from all that rain, just the way it is. Now, the positive side of all this is when we get all this runoff and all this kind of rain here, when we still have good ice, it brings these fish in. So it's like the spawning bell, right? It's part of the equation for these fish to come in, all that runoff and everything with the rain. And so we're going to really start to see a big movement of fish coming in if it wasn't already good as it was, which it was, but it's even going to get better yet. So we've got at least a couple to 3 to 4 more weeks looking at the forecast, riding the wave of these ups and downs, these warm fronts and cold fronts of some really good ice fishing. Now, the guys have been taking a lot of fish out there. We've seen big perch coming in still. I think all the perch now and the big perch contest are like 1.25 pounds or bigger. And then the multi-species contest, I mean, we got some really quality fish in there. The only one that really could use to get bumped is that farm animal that just came in. It's just a small dogfish right now, so there's a lot of room for improvement there. But all these fish are some really good quality fish this year on the boards. The perch bite has still been good at all locations. We've had great perch reports from up in Fairhaven, from at Selfridge. I mean, Selfridge down by the barracks, and then even there's been a group off to the left that's been doing good over there. And then the metro area still continues to produce good fish. And one of the patterns that we've seen, and again, go back to the last report, is there's been a lot more activity in shallow. So don't disregard that shallow bite, even if you're not on that leading edge of a storm system coming in. I always check that shallow bite first, and a great way to fish shallow is with bead spoons. Diamond willow is a great one for fishing super shallow because it starts to flutter really fast, and then as you go out deeper, you can fish heavier bead spoons going out into that deeper water. But something that gets down there and flutters really fast in that shallow water, and gets their attention, brings them in, that's really the way to go. I know a lot of you guys like to fish minnows and stuff, but I'm a bead spoon guy, so I like to fish those bead spoons, especially shallow. And when you're sight fishing them and watching them come in chasing that bead, it's a lot of fun. There's been some great panfish action going on as well. Pumpkin seeds and big sunnies. I know Trevor was out a couple of times and he's gotten some great catches of pumpkin seeds, sunfish, and mixed bags with perch. And even the rock bass bite has been on. Trevor went out there trying to put a fish on the board to beat that existing fish that's on the board right now in the rock bass division. He brought in a huge bucket of Rockies this week, but none of them made the cut, unfortunately. There was a lot of quality fish in there. I mean, there was a lot of like 0.8s and 0.9s, but they just quite weren't big enough to bump that big rock bass. But I know he'll be at it again to try to get on the board in that section. That's a fish that just doesn't get enough attention out here, and especially in the winter time when you can keep the temperature of the fish down, keep that meat cold. It's actually very good table fare, and that goes for all your panfish, your crappies, your bluegills, your perch. Part of the reason why the fish taste so good when they're caught in the wintertime is that they're not floating around out in somebody's live well in 75-degree water dead, already starting to break down. A lot of these fish that, a lot of folks don't realize it, but keeping that meat of that fish cold, you're catching it cold, you're cleaning it cold, and then if you're putting it in the freezer or you're frying it right up, the meat doesn't have any chance to break down at all. So regardless of what species of fish it is, in the wintertime they taste better just because you can't help but take better care of the quality of the meat because it's always cold, so it's not breaking down. So anyway, so yeah, rock bass, crappies, sunfish, bluegills, perch, walleye, they'll all taste better in the wintertime just because that meat is it's just really super fresh, and you can't get it any fresher because it never warms up. Trying to think if there's anything else I wanted to talk about here. Really just the ice conditions. I know a lot of folks, when they see these warm-ups like this, they get very nervous, and you should be cautious always. But we started out with a lot of ice, and earlier in the week I wanted to get a good baseline, so I went behind the Selfridge store and checked out the ice, drilled a hole right in the middle of the canal, and we had 18 inches of ice in the canal behind the Selfridge store. So going forward, I'm going to kind of monitor that thickness back there as kind of a barometer of what's going on everywhere. But 18 inches is a lot of ice to start out with, and we probably have 12 to 15 inches, or had 12 to 15 inches in a lot of the areas out there on the main lake, a lot of the older ice. So that is, a great base to work with. And with these 3-day warm-ups and 3-day cool downs, we're not going to lose the ice really fast out there. So we got a long time ahead of us here, I believe, unless the wind does some, exceptional damage out there in a hurry to the ice. We should have, a couple to 3-4 more weeks of fishing out there and it should be really great fishing. So this is free fishing weekend. I'd mentioned it in the report last week. So you don't need a license on Saturday or Sunday this week. So that is free fishing weekend. So if you're from out of state and you don't want to buy a license, or maybe you just never been out before, this is a great weekend to get out there and you know, take advantage of what we have left of the ice fishing season here in Southeast Michigan. And with that said, we will see you at the stores this weekend. Hey, if you like this video content and you want to get updated as soon as the next video is out there, hit that subscribe button and the little bell icon and you'll get notified as soon as the next video is up.